Once we have our content, we need to learn how to speak HTML. For us to work effectively, we need to be in two locations. We'll be doing editing work in a plain text editor. In this case, I'm using Sublime, which works on both Windows and Mac machines. And we'll need a browser to view what's happening. So I'm going to open up this file in the browser. To do that, I hit Control-O or Command-O. And then I need to be able to go to where it is. Now it's important you know where you've saved your files. So I know mine is in 2350, under videos, under HTML tags, under resources, and there's my HTML file. Now when I open it up, it's just all mushed together. So because I have not added any HTML, there's no structure. So the file has a .html extension on the end, but it has no HTML tags. So the first thing we need to learn is that when we're using HTML, we work with tags. Now there are beginning and opening tags. A tag looks like this. It starts with a less than sign, and then you put whatever the name of the tag is. I'm going to do a paragraph first, which is just P. And that's the opening tag, and then the closing tag looks just like it, but it has a slash before the P. So there's an opening P tag and a closing P tag. Now when you use opening and closing tags, in between them, so right in between here is where you're going to put whatever content you want to be there. In this case, here's a paragraph that I want. So that's all of the content. So I'm going to put that right in there, right between that opening and closing tag. And now I've created a paragraph that is using HTML to structure it. So I want to see what this looks like in the browser. There are two steps to do that. I need to save the file I'm working in. So I'm going to use Control-S and save it. And then I'm going to go over into the browser and I'm going to refresh it. And look what happened. Right here I have structure around that one paragraph, right? With a paragraph is a block tag, which means you get a blank line before and a blank line after, and then all that content is there. Now watch as I resize. See, it doesn't matter if I get skinny, skinny, skinny. All of this is word wrapping, but there will always be that structure, that blank line before and blank line after, because I've used HTML to say that that's a paragraph. Now I can do that same thing with all the paragraphs that I have, right? Put an opening tag where you've already got the content. It's easier actually to add the tag around the content. And so there I put an opening closing tag around that one. And here's another paragraph. So I put the opening tag there and I put the closing tag after. Here's another one. Put the opening tag there and the closing one after. And let's go ahead and save and see what's happening over here in our HTML document. Notice what's happening. We're adding structure to the document. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs that we've outlined. And we did that by using opening and closing tags. There are some other opening and closing tags that we can use. Heading tags are opening and closing tags. So here's something I want to be a heading. So I'm going to put the heading tag looks like this. It always starts with a less than. All of them start with a less than sign. Then there are heading tags. Heading 1 is the very biggest. And it's just H1 is the tag. And then at the end of what I want to be the heading, I'm going to put a closing H1. Notice this note that says it's a large heading. I am not going to use this at all. I don't want that to show up in the web page. I'm going to erase it. And in fact, my heading is just the scientific method. Now when I save that, I'm going to come back over and refresh it. And look what happens. I get structure. I get this blank line before and blank line after. But now with a heading, I get size. So I'm seeing some difference in the font size. And I also get it's also bold. So that's what I get with headings, is they're bold and the font size varies. So that one was a large heading. Let's go look at what other kind of headings. Here's a medium heading. So we can make this one, instead of using H1, I'm going to use H2, which is a little bit smaller. I'm going to get rid of that note and close it with a heading 2. So now I'm going to save this. Let's go see if we can find what this looks in the browser. And there it is. And notice how this top one is an H1, the bottom one is an H2. It's a block, headings are all block elements, which you get a blank line before and a blank line after. But their size changes based on which tag you use. So let's go ahead and show you these. There's heading 3, which is just H3. So I'm going to save that and reload. Gets smaller. Heading 4 gets even smaller. And notice that I'm getting differences in size. It's still bolded, even though it's as small as the regular text, it's still bolded. There's 2 more. There's heading 5. Oh, where did that go? Oh, look what I did. I did heading 4-5. There is no such thing as heading 4-5, so I just made a typo. And when you make a typo, things don't quite work the way you expect them. So I save it again. I go fix my typo. I save them. I go back, and there it is. There's heading 5. Let's try the last one, which is heading 6. And refresh it. Notice how small this is getting. We can change the size of this if we want once we get to CSS. But we have this range from heading 1 up here, the very largest, to heading 6 down here, and all of them are bolded. Now if I try to keep going, if I try to do heading 7, Control Save and reload, notice here it is. It's right here, but it's not signed up. It doesn't show up as anything. There's no structure added because there is no heading 7. So when you're working with HTML, you can only use the tags that exist in the language. And H7 does not exist in the language, so it has no meaning and it has no effect on the web page. So it's read as a tag because it has the less than, greater than signs. But because the browser doesn't know an H7 tag, it doesn't interpret it or do anything with it. Okay, I'm going to put this back to a heading 2, and that's what I want to be there. All right, so there I have a heading 1 and a heading 2. And I've added that structure by adding that HTML. I'm adding that structure to my page. Another opening and closing tag is the A tag. So here's, remember with the opening and closing, you put the content between in the middle. Here's the word that I want to be the link, how stuff works. And so I'm going to put an opening A tag. And the opening A tag, oops, I got rid of it. I didn't want to get rid of it. I didn't want to replace it. I want to put an opening A tag in front of it. A tags are used to make links. And they originally stood for anchor tags. And so that's where the A comes from. But they're for making hyperlinks. So now I'm going to put the opening A tag there and the closing A tag there. So here I have an opening tag and a closing tag. And then the content goes between the opening tag. So the word that I want to be the link goes between the opening and closing A tag. So I save that and I come over and reload it here. And this is it right here, and we don't see anything happening. And that is because some tags require what's called an attribute. So we don't only want to know that this is a hyperlink. What we want to know also is that hyperlinks need to be able to go somewhere. So it needs an address, a URL of where to go. And here's that URL. But the way I identify that is I use what's called an attribute. Inside the opening tag, I'm going to put a space, and then I'm going to use the attribute. And again, just like with tags, you have to use a name that's in the language, the P tag, the H2 tag, the A tag. You have to use them exactly right. Same with attributes. You need to know what attributes are allowed. And for an A tag, the attribute that identifies the language, the URL or where the link is to go is the href tag, or the href attribute. Sorry, this is an attribute and it qualifies the tag, right? So this is truly an A tag, but I'm going to use the attribute to say something specific about this A tag. And the href is attribute, right? That's the name of the attribute. It has to be one that exists in the language. Then the equal sign, and then I put quotes. And inside the quotes, I put the value of the href in this A tag. And here it is. This is my URL, and I need to get all of it, all the way to the beginning of the HTTP. I'm going to cut it there, and I'm going to put it right there. href. Notice how long that is, but also notice how this editor colors the text. This is called a plain text editor with syntax highlighting, which is very helpful when you get to this point. You see what it is. So the tags here are showing up in red, so I can identify, I can see what the tags are. Attributes, the attribute name is showing up in this green. Things between quotes is showing yellow. The nice thing about this is the colors tell you something. So if I leave this end quote off, notice how that yellow continues way past where I thought it should. And I go, oh, there must be something wrong. And that helps me go back and say, oh, I missed my closing quote. And now things are being colored the way I expect. Notice that I need to get rid of my parentheses because they do not belong in as part of the URL, and they don't belong as part of my text. So I want to do that. So now I do a save here, and I go back and reload it here. And notice how the word that is between the opening A tag and the closing A tag, how stuff works, all of a sudden has turned a blue color and is underlined. And that's what you get when you add an A tag. That's the style you get, is you get some color and an underline. And now when I notice how my cursor goes from a straight bar to when I get over it, or an arrow, when I get over it, it turns to a hand. And that identifies it as a link. If I click on this, oh, it actually goes to that new URL. And that's how we get the A link tag. Now I can just use my back arrow to go back to where I was. There are other kinds of tags. Now, so all of the tags in HTML begin with the less than sign and end with the greater than sign. But not all of them have opening and closing tags. So remember, the opening and closing tag works that you put the opening tag before the content and the closing tag after. You say, okay, everything in the middle is what I want to show up on the web page. There are also what is called replace tags. And replace tags actually add something. So they don't open and close. So for example, here is an HR tag, and it kind of opens and closes itself. So I start it with HR, it stands for hard rule, and then it has a /close. So it's self-contained. There's only one tag, and when I save this and go back over and reload it, what you get is this hard rule. Right? You get this line across your web page. And what's happening here is it says, okay, here's this tag. I want you to replace this tag with a line in the content. Another one that's a replace tag, I'm going to put right here in the middle of the paragraph, so it's really obvious we can see it, is the break tag, which is BR, stands for break. And then I'm going to close it. So it's a single tag right there. I'm going to save it, and we can go see it. What this says is replace this tag with a carriage return. And there it is. Right there after they, there's a carriage return right before really. So right between they and really, it shows up right here as a carriage return. Remember that when we haven't added any, HTML ignores all white space. So if I just go in here and I say, hey, I want a carriage return here. In fact, I can put 2 of them. And I go back and I save it. See, I've taken that break tag out and I just put real carriage returns. I do that. What do I get? Nothing. They don't even show up. Let's see if I can find it. There's the they and the really, and there's no carriage return between them, even though there's carriage returns here. And that is because the browser, whenever it's doing a .html file, it simply replaces any white space, so all these carriage returns, with a single space. So if I want one in there, then I've got to put a break tag, and I can put as many as I want. I can put a couple in there, right? So and this says replace this tag with the carriage return, replace this tag with a carriage return, replace this tag with a carriage return. I'm going to save that and reload, and there I have them. 1, 2, 3, right? There's carriage returns, 1, 2, 3 carriage returns, just what I asked for. So these are replacement tags, and there's no content to go in them because they're just saying whatever was here. The one that we'll use a lot is the image. So right here is an image, right? We've made a note. We've described the image. There are words about the scientific method. And we've said this is the file. And we want it really to replace these words and that file name with an actual image with the file. In fact, I can go show you where that is. Here's that image, words2.png. If I double click on that, it shows me what that image is, right? And I want that to show up in my web page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an image tag, and an image tag looks like this. It's just img, and then it self-closes because it's a replace tag. And this says replace this tag with an image file. So I'm going to save that, and I'm going to come back and reload. And notice that nothing here changed, right? There's nothing here showing up. I've got that image tag in. What I have to do is I have to be able to tell it which file to replace it with. So there are two attributes that we use with an image tag. And one is the Src attribute. This stands for source. And here it follows the same pattern. The name of the attribute, the equal sign, followed by quotes. Okay, and inside the quotes you put the value. Well, the Src attribute said this is the name of the file. So I'm going to take the name of the file and I'm going to put it there in the source attribute. And that's where that will show up. And now that will say, now if I do that, if I save there and I go and reload, notice what happened. There is that image tag right there. So I've got that, it replaced it. It took this, it says here, replace this tag with this image file. And that's exactly what's happened, is it's put it right there. Now, if we misspell the file, right, it can't find it because it says there's a broken image. It says, I went and looked. I looked in exactly the same place where the scientificmethod.html file is for a file called words.png, and there's not one there. So I couldn't find it. So this browser displays a little broken image icon. So what some people choose, so you need to make sure two things have to happen. It has to be, the file name has to be exact, and the file needs to be right with the HTML file for it to find it. It can be in a separate folder. We'll talk about that on a different video. There are times when people turn their images off, and some people can't see images. So if they have some kind of physical limitation where they can't see images, or some choice where they want to, that's why we provide a description. So the other attribute that we use is the alt attribute, and this is an alternative to the image file. So alt stands for alternative, and we use the attribute name followed by the equal and then the quotes. And inside here we put whatever we want to be displayed, whatever text we want to be displayed, if the image is not available, or if the person viewing it has chosen not to look at the images. And that happens for a variety of reasons. So we want to put a description here that would be meaningful to somebody not seeing the image. So if somebody does not have good vision, so they can't see images, we want to be able to tell them about this image. So what do we want them to know if they're not seeing the image? So here what I put is words about the scientific method. I probably don't need that S. So that's what I want to show up if they don't see the image. So I'm going to save that and reload. Now notice that we can see the image because it was able to find that file, so it displayed the image. But if I had my images turned off, or if there were an error, right, if I made that same typo and came back and reloaded it, it says, oh, I can't find that image, so it shows the broken image file, but it also shows words about the scientific method. So it gives that description. If it were done correctly, but they had just turned off their image files, then it wouldn't have that broken image file. It would just put the words. So this is your first introduction. There's that image back again. Let me make a note here. Images, these inline elements, really need to be contained in something. So images don't stand alone very well. Notice how the browser is displaying it okay, but this actually won't validate, and that will be important to us in a while. So image tags need to be contained in something. And here I'm just going to contain it in a paragraph. Now I don't have any words that I want to be in this paragraph. I just want it to contain the image. But since the image is inline and wants to be contained, I'm going to put that image inside. Notice how the entire image tag goes between the opening and closing paragraph tag. And so now that image is contained. Notice how it makes no difference on the web page, but it actually becomes meaningful when we get to the validation stage. So remember that it does that. And there's an intro into how tags, opening and closing tags work, how replacement tags work, and how you put content between the tags, and then attributes, how you use attributes, put specific meaning on this particular tag. Attribute name, equal sign, and then the value in quotes. One other thing I want to tell you is what an element is. An element is the entire thing. It's the beginning tag, the opening tag, the ending or closing tag, and everything in between. So this is the paragraph element. Here is a paragraph element right here. It's the beginning and the closing and everything in between. This would be the A element. See right there how that's the link elements. The element is the entire thing, the opening tag, the closing tag, and any content in between. For a replace tag, the entire element is the replacement tag. And there's your first intro into how to use tags, attributes, and speak the HTML